Imagine standing in the middle of a packed shopping mall on Black Friday. Bodies everywhere, kids screaming, people fighting over deals, chaos. Now imagine that same mall 15 years later. Same building, same stores, but this time when you walk through the doors, there are only 12 people wandering around. The food court has 4 restaurants still open. The rest are boarded up. The arcade is dark. The parking lot looks like an airport at 3 in the morning. This isn't a zombie movie. This is the projected future of consumer capitalism in a world where every single year there are fewer customers than the year before. Global fertility rates have collapsed from 4.7 children per woman in 1950 to 2.3 in 2022. We need 2.1 just to keep the population stable. South Korea is at 0.72. China is officially at 1.0, but probably lower. Even wealthy countries with strong social safety nets like Norway are stuck at 1.57. The conveyor belt of human beings is slowing down. And in some places, it's already moving backwards. And here's the number that should make every economist on Earth wake up in a cold sweat. 38 nations, countries with populations over 1 million people each, are projected to lose significant chunks of their population over the next 25 years. China alone is expected to lose over 155 million people. That's not a typo. That's roughly half the population of the United States just vanishing. From the workforce, the tax base, the consumer economy, Japan will lose 18 million, Russia nearly 8 million, Italy over 7 million. These aren't small villages in the countryside fatting away. These are economic superpowers hemorrhaging the one resource you can't print, mine, or import at scale: people. Now I know what you're thinking. Fewer people sounds kind of nice, right? Less traffic, cheaper rent, maybe we stop destroying the planet. And look, we'll get to that. But first, you need to understand something that the people running pension funds, central banks, and real estate empires are just now starting to admit out loud. Our entire economic system, the stock market, the housing market, your retirement account, the price of a hamburger, all of it was built on a single unshakable assumption: that there will always be more people next year than there were this year. That assumption is now dead. And the collapse of that assumption is going to rewrite everything, not in 100 years, not in some distant sci-fi future. It's already happening. Right now, there are villages in Japan where the only sound you hear is wind rustling through empty houses. Right now, there are schools in South Korea being converted into senior centers because there are no children left to teach. Right now, in parts of Eastern Europe, you can buy a house for the price of a used car because nobody wants it. Nobody is coming. The next generation, the one that was supposed to buy your house, fund your pension, and keep the economy humming, they were never born. This is the economic endgame of the population collapse, and the terrifying part: we have no plan, not a real one. Governments are throwing cash at the problem like a drunk gambler doubling down at a rigged table. It's not working. The birth rates keep falling, the average age keeps rising. And every year, the gap between the number of workers and the number of retirees gets wider. If you are under 40 years old, everything you were told about how the world works: work hard, save money, retire comfortably, that contract is being shredded in real time. So let's walk through exactly what happens when the population collapses, not the sanitized version you get from think tanks or politicians trying to calm you down. The real version, the version where entire economic pillars crumble because they were built on a foundation of sand. Let's start with the most immediate crisis, the one that's going to hit you personally within the next 10 to 15 years: your retirement. Every modern pension system, whether it's Social Security in the US, state pensions in Europe, or Japan's Nenkin system, operates on a very simple principle. The young pay for the old. You work, the government takes a chunk of your paycheck. And that money doesn't go into a vault with your name on it. It's immediately sent out as a check to someone who retired decades ago. The system works beautifully as long as the base of the pyramid is always bigger than the top. As long as there are way more workers than retirees, the math is easy. In 1950, the ratio in most developed countries was roughly 16 workers for every one retiree. 16 people chipping in a little bit each to fund one person's retirement. You barely even notice the tax. Fast forward to today, In the United States, that ratio is approaching 2.5 to 1. In Japan and parts of Europe, it's nearly 1 to 1. Imagine you're at a dinner table in 1950. 16 people are splitting the bill for one guy. Easy. Everyone throws in a few bucks. Now imagine it's just you and one other person paying for that same retiree. Except now the retiree is living 20 years longer than expected, needs 3 expensive surgeries, and is on 6 medications that cost $1,000 a month. Oh, and you, the worker paying for all this, you're drowning in student debt, can't afford to buy a house. And your wages haven't kept up with inflation in 30 years. This is the pension crisis in a nutshell. The math doesn't work anymore. The U.S. Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted by 2035. That's not some far-off dystopian future. That's 11 years from now. When that happens, the government has exactly 2 options. Option 1, cut benefits. Tell 70 million American retirees that their monthly check is getting slashed by 20 to 25%. This is political suicide. Old people vote in massive numbers. Young people post on TikTok. Who do you think politicians are going to prioritize? Option 2, raise taxes. They look at you, the millennial or Gen Z worker, who's already paying 15% of your income into a system you'll probably never benefit from, and they say, hey, we're gonna need 40% now. This is how you start an intergenerational war, the young looking at the old and thinking. You had cheap college, affordable housing, the greatest stock market run in history, and now you want to cannibalize my paycheck. To fund your cruise to Alaska, the resentment is already brewing. Go into any Reddit thread about Social Security, and you'll see young people openly saying they expect to get $0 from the system. And they're probably right. The dependency ratio, the number of retirees compared to workers, is flipping. In 25 years, the proportion of people aged 65 and older in developed nations is expected to nearly double from 17% to 31%. When you have more people riding in the cart than pulling the cart stops moving. The promise that the government will take care of you when you're old, that promise is disintegrating. If you're planning to retire on Social Security alone, you're planning to be poor. Let's move from your retirement account to your parents' biggest asset, their house. For the last 40 years, real estate has been the golden ticket. You buy a house, you wait, it goes up in value. You sell it for a profit or you borrow against it. The family home became the piggy bank, the nest egg. The generational wealth transfer. Your parents bought a house in 1985 for $40,000. Today Zillow says it's worth $700,000. The plan is simple. They'll sell it, downsize, live off the equity. Maybe help you with a down payment, but here's the problem. Who are they selling it to? Real estate is a game of musical chairs. You buy a starter home, sell it to the next generation. They buy it, sell it to the next. The game only works if there's always someone new walking into the room, ready to sit in the chair you just left. But what happens when the music stops and there's nobody at the door? We don't need to speculate, we can just look at Japan. Japan currently has over 9 million empty homes. They call them Ikea, ghost houses. These aren't condemned shacks in the middle of nowhere. These are normal family homes in decent towns. You can buy a house in rural Japan right now for $500. Some towns are literally giving them away for free. Why? Because the previous owner died. Their kids, if they had any, moved to Tokyo. And the cost of maintaining the property, the taxes, the upkeep, it's more than the house is worth, so they just abandon it. This is what happens when supply floods the market and demand disappears. Let's talk basic economics, supply and demand. Over the next 15 to 20 years, the largest generation in history, the baby boomers, are going to age out. They're going to downsize, move into assisted living, or pass away. That means millions of large family homes are going to hit the market. That's the supply side. Now the demand side. Who's buying? Generation X is smaller. Millennials are smaller and poorer. Gen Z is even smaller and even more broke. You've got 50 sellers for every 10 buyers. What happens to price? It collapses. Picture a neighborhood in 2040. It's a nice suburb, tree-lined streets, good schools. But 3 of the houses on your block are sitting empty. The grass is overgrown, windows are cracked, the driveway is covered in moss. When 3 houses on your street are selling for pennies or not selling at all, your house isn't worth 700,000 anymore. It's worth whatever the market will bear, and if nobody's buying, that number approaches zero. This is what economists call structural deflation in housing, not a temporary correction like 2008. A permanent, demographic-driven collapse in demand, and here's why this is so devastating. For the middle class, the home is the primary store of wealth. It's not stocks or bonds or a trust fund. It's the house. If housing prices enter a multi-decade decline, trillions of dollars of perceived wealth simply evaporate. You can't borrow against your home to start a business because there's no equity. You can't sell the house to pay for your aging parents' care because nobody wants to buy it. This is the asset deflation trap. We've spent the last 50 years in a world where assets go up. Houses, stocks, collectibles, everything appreciates. We cannot mentally process a world where assets lose value every single year. Because there simply aren't enough humans left to want them. Think about commercial real estate. Office parks, shopping malls, factories. These were all built assuming the population would keep growing. In a shrinking society, a 20% population drop doesn't just mean 20% fewer customers. It means the mall goes bankrupt, the factory shuts down, the office park turns into a monument to a lost era. China built entire ghost cities and the West mocked them, but soon we'll have the opposite problem. Ghost cities that used to be full, now slowly crumbling because the people simply faded away. Now let's talk about the thing that matters even more than money or houses, the future. To be blunt, and I'm going to get some heat for saying this, innovation is a young person's game. Think about the biggest breakthroughs in human history. Einstein published his theory of relativity at 26. Steve Jobs started Apple at 21. Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook at 19. Larry Page and Sergey Brin founded Google in their mid-20s. It's not that older people aren't smart. It's that they're risk-averse. When you're 22, broke, sleeping on a futon, eating ramen, you have nothing to lose. You can bet everything on a crazy idea with a 99% chance of failure, because if it doesn't work, you just go get a job. But when you're 55 with a mortgage, 2 kids in college, and a bad knee, you don't swing for the fences. You protect what you have, you vote for stability, you invest in bonds, not moonshots. Now imagine a society where the median age is 55. For context, the median age in the United States right now is about 38. In Japan, it's already 49. In a gerontocracy, capital stops flowing into bold new ventures and starts flowing entirely into maintenance. We stop funding fusion energy because we need that money for hip replacements. We stop dreaming about Mars because the voting base cares more about preserving pension payouts for another 5 years. Economists call this secular stagnation. It's a polite way of saying nothing exciting happens anymore. You end up in a world that looks technologically frozen. The cars in 2050 look just like the cars in 2030. Same phones, same apps, same movies, just endless reboots and sequels because studios are too terrified to take a risk on something new. There's also the concept of fluid intelligence. Psychologists distinguish between 2 types of intelligence. Crystallized intelligence, which is wisdom, experience, vocabulary, things older people excel at. And fluid intelligence, which is the ability to solve new problems, think abstractly, adapt to rapid change. Fluid intelligence peaks in your 20s and early 30s. If you shrink the pool of young brains, you are literally shrinking humanity's processing power. We are staring down climate change, potential pandemics, energy crises, resource wars. We need millions of hungry, flexible, creative young minds attacking these problems. Instead, we're asking a smaller and smaller cohort of young people to spend their prime years taking care of an army of elderly dependents. This isn't just economic decline, it's cultural depression. A world without youth is a world without rebellion, without experimentation, without cool. It's a permanent Sunday afternoon at a quiet retirement community. Safe maybe, inspiring, not even close. Let's talk about something you're going to feel personally in the next decade, the labor shortage. You've heard the meme, nobody wants to work anymore, but here's the terrifying truth. It's not that they don't want to work. It's that they don't exist. For the last 40 years, globalization gave us access to an endless pool of cheap labor. If wages got too high in the US, you moved the factory to China. If China got expensive, you moved to Vietnam. But now everybody is running out of young people. China's working-age population peaked a few years ago. It's now shrinking by millions every year. By 2050, China will lose more workers than the entire current population of Brazil. Europe is shrinking, Russia is shrinking. Even places like Thailand, Mexico, and Brazil are below replacement fertility. Imagine this scenario. It's 2035, your kitchen pipe bursts, water is flooding everywhere. You call a plumber, the automated voice says, you are number 4,300 in line, estimated wait time, 6 months. Why? Because plumbing is hard physical work. It requires young backs, strong knees, and the willingness to crawl into tight, disgusting spaces. And in 2035, young people are a luxury commodity. The few plumbers that exist charge $500 an hour. A haircut costs $150. A cup of coffee is $25. This is the Baumol effect on steroids. Services that require human labor skyrocket in cost because human labor becomes the scarcest resource on the planet. But wait, you're thinking, robots and AI will save us. Sure, AI can write a mediocre blog post or generate a weird image of a cat riding a skateboard, but can a robot fix a complex HVAC system in a cramped attic? Can a robot gently change the bedpan of an 85-year-old dementia patient with dignity and empathy? We are decades, maybe longer, away from robots that can handle the messy, chaotic, unstructured physical world. This creates a new kind of inflation, not money-printing inflation, but cost-push inflation. If you run a restaurant and there are no teenagers to wash dishes, you have to pay a 40-year-old $30 an hour to do it, so your burger now costs $40. We're moving from an era of abundance, cheap goods, cheap delivery, instant gratification, to an era of scarcity. The Amazon Prime fantasy, where you click a button and a human servant brings you toothpaste in 2 hours for free. That was a historical anomaly. It was subsidized by cheap labor and venture capital. In a depopulating world, having a human run errands for you becomes a luxury only the wealthy can afford. We're going back to doing things ourselves, fixing our own stuff, cooking our own meals, mowing our own lawns. The age of convenience is ending because the human infrastructure that powered it is collapsing. Now zoom out, way out. What happens to the global balance of power when superpowers start dying? History is clear on this. Population equals power. The British Empire rose when Britain's population exploded. The American century happened during a massive baby boom. China's rise was fueled by a billion-person workforce. You can have all the advanced fighter jets you want, but if you don't have 20-year-olds to fly them, maintain them, and defend your borders, they're useless. Armies run on youth. Russia is facing demographic catastrophe. They're losing hundreds of thousands of young men in war, while their birth rate guarantees those men will never be replaced. This makes a nation dangerous. A dying country is a desperate country if a leader knows that in 20 years their nation will be too old and too weak to fight. They might decide to strike now while they still have the strength. This is the closing window theory. Some analysts argue that China's aggression toward Taiwan isn't happening despite their demographic collapse. It's happening because of it. They know that by 2040, they'll be drowning in retirees and short on soldiers. If they're going to make a move, it has to be soon. And then there's the global scramble for the most valuable resource of the 21st century, people. Right now, Western politics is dominated by build the wall and stop the boats. But I guarantee you, in 20 years, the slogan will flip. It'll be please come in. Countries will compete aggressively to attract young immigrants. Canada is already doing this, importing record numbers to prop up the housing market and tax base. Germany is desperate for workers. Even Japan, historically closed off, is quietly cracking the door open. This leads to brain drain on a global scale. The wealthy North will vacuum up doctors, engineers, nurses from the developing South, leaving poorer countries even worse off. It's a new form of colonialism, not resource extraction, human extraction. Imagine a future where countries auction off visas. Come to Italy, we'll give you tax-free income and a house. Come to Germany, we'll give you citizenship in 3 months. It sounds insane now, but when hospitals are understaffed and there's no one to care for the elderly, ideologies shift fast. Let's talk about the religion of the modern world, consumerism. The entire global economy is built on one idea. Next year, we will sell more phones, more cars, more burgers than we did this year. That's what GDP growth means. That's what drives stock prices. That's why your retirement account goes up. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Old people don't buy stuff. When you're 25, you're an economic engine. You're buying a car, furniture, clothes, electronics, diapers, toys, beer. You are a consumption machine. When you're 80, you're done. You have all the furniture you'll ever need. You're not buying new sneakers. You're not upgrading your phone every year. You're not buying a bigger house. You're spending shifts almost entirely to maintenance, food, utilities, healthcare, that's it. Economists talk about the velocity of money, how fast a dollar moves from person to person. In a young society, money sprints. I pay the barista, she pays the rideshare driver, he pays the babysitter. In an aging society, money crawls. It gets hoarded in savings accounts for future medical bills. When consumption drops, companies stop growing. When companies stop growing, stock prices stagnate. We assume the stock market always goes up 8% a year on average. But that average was calculated during the greatest population boom in human history, 1950 to 2020. Look at Japan's stock market, the Nikkei. In 1989, it hit an all-time high. Then demographics kicked in. When did it finally recover to that 1989 peak? 2024, 35 years to break even. Imagine retiring in 1990 with your life savings in the market and watching it flatline for the rest of your life. That's the future of the S&P 500 in a shrinking world, but won't prices go down if fewer people are buying? Isn't cheaper stuff good? Welcome to deflation. It sounds nice. Cheaper TVs, cheaper rent. But deflation is economic poison. Here's the cycle. Demand drops because there are fewer people. Prices fall to attract buyers. You, the consumer, think, why buy this car for $30,000 today when it'll be $25,000 next month? So you wait. Because you wait, the car company makes no revenue. They lay off workers. Those workers now have no income to spend. Demand drops further. This is the deflationary spiral that trapped Japan for 3 decades. It turns a dynamic economy into a stagnant swamp. Why start a business when your customer base is shrinking every single year? Why invest in the future when the future is smaller than the present? So far, we've talked about spreadsheets and systems. But the most devastating part of the population collapse isn't economic. It's human. We are building a world of profound loneliness. For all of human history, your safety net wasn't the government. It was family. Your siblings, your cousins, your aunts and uncles, all nearby. If you got sick, someone brought soup. If you lost your job, a cousin got you work. Today, we're moving toward what demographers call the beanpole family. No siblings. Your parents had no siblings. That means no aunts, no uncles, no cousins. The family tree has no branches, just a single vertical line. When your parents get old, the entire burden falls on you. There's no brother to split the cost, no sister to take shifts. Just you working full-time, trying to raise your own kid, and somehow care for 2 aging parents. This is the sandwich generation on steroids. In Japan, they have a word for it, kodokushi, lonely death. It refers to people who die alone in their apartments and aren't discovered for weeks or months. There are companies that specialize in cleaning these apartments, scrubbing the stain of a decomposed body out of the floor. This is a growth industry. In South Korea, young men are locking themselves in their rooms for years, refusing to engage with a society that demands too much and offers too little. They call them hikikomori. How do we cope? We're already seeing it. We replace human intimacy with synthetic substitutes. AI girlfriends, AI therapists, elder care robots programmed to have conversations with dementia patients. We're heading toward a future where millions of people will live and die, having spent more emotional energy on algorithms than on actual human beings, and it creates a feedback loop. The lonelier we get, the less we date. The less we date, the fewer children we have. the fewer children we have, the lonelier the next generation becomes. It's a civilization slowly retreating into its bedroom, putting on a VR headset, and disappearing. Governments know this is a crisis, so they're trying to fix it. The obvious solution: pay people to have kids. If the problem is money, just throw cash at it, right? Hungary offers lifetime tax exemptions if you have 4 children. South Korea is handing out massive subsidies. Russia brought back Soviet-era medals for motherhood. The result: it doesn't work. South Korea has spent over $200 billion trying to boost the birth rate over 16 years. Their fertility rate didn't go up, it went down. From 1.2 to 0.72. Why? Because having a child isn't a financial calculation, it's a lifestyle sacrifice. In a modern, hyper-competitive world, a child is a massive liability to your career, your freedom, your status. To succeed professionally, you need to work 60-hour weeks. To afford housing, you need 2 incomes. To be considered a good parent, you need to afford tutors, activities, travel teams. The bar for what counts as acceptable parenting has been raised so high. The sociologist Daniel Bell called this the cultural contradiction of capitalism. Capitalism demands you be a mobile, flexible, dedicated worker. Biology demands you be a stable, present, nurturing parent. You cannot be both. The system is designed to consume the very humans it needs to survive. So if bribery doesn't work, what's left? Some are already talking about artificial wombs, industrialized reproduction. The state growing babies in labs because women simply won't do it anymore. It sounds like dystopian sci-fi. But if a country faces extinction or lab-grown citizens, which do you think they'll choose? Desperation justifies anything. But the more likely outcome: we just shrink. We accept a smaller, quieter, older world. We learn to live in the ruins of the growth era. Before we end on total despair, let's acknowledge the one group quietly celebrating all of this: environmentalists. For decades, we've been told overpopulation is destroying the planet. More people equals more carbon, more pollution, more destruction. So if population collapses, that's good for the Earth, right? And honestly, they're not wrong. We're already seeing what happens when humans retreat. In the Chernobyl exclusion zone, wolves and bears have returned in huge numbers. In abandoned Japanese villages, wildlife is reclaiming the streets. In parts of Detroit, urban sprawl is turning back into prairie. If we go from 8 billion people to 4 billion over the next century, the pressure on the biosphere drops dramatically. Carbon emissions plummet, forests regrow, oceans recover. But here's the trap: the transition to that green future is going to be economic hell for the humans living through it. Our entire system runs on growth. Banks collapse without growth because loans depend on future expansion. Supply chains break, welfare states crumble. The irony is brutal. To save the biosphere, we might have to destroy the economy. We're like a train speeding toward a cliff. Climate change is the cliff. The population collapse is the emergency brake. Great, we avoid the cliff. But the sudden stop shatters everyone on board. Is it worth it? Ask the wolves, they'll say yes. Ask the struggling pensioner in 2050, and you'll get a very different answer. So where does this leave us? We are standing at the edge of the biggest transformation in human history since the Industrial Revolution. For 250 years, the arrow only pointed one direction: up, more people, more wealth, more cities. Now, for the first time, the arrow is turning down. This isn't the end of the world, but it is the end of the world as we've known it. We have to stop pretending this is temporary. We have to stop believing that a $500 tax credit will make people start having 6 kids again. Culture has changed, biology has shifted, the incentives are broken. We're entering the age of contraction, and we need to invent a new kind of economics. One that doesn't panic when the GDP line goes flat. Maybe we start valuing community over consumption. Maybe we prioritize care over career. Maybe we measure success not by how many skyscrapers we build, but by how well we take care of the people already here. The next 50 years are going to be messy. There will be crashes, defaults, ghost towns, loneliness, political chaos. But on the other side, maybe there's a smaller, steadier humanity. One that isn't devouring the planet, one that has learned that more isn't always better. We are the generation managing the decline. We're the hospice workers for the old world, and the architects of whatever comes next. So when you walk through that quiet city in 2100, past the empty playground, and the converted school, is it tragedy, or is it just a new chapter? The party is over, the music has stopped. The question is, can we learn to live in the silence?